So I think what we'll do is we'll just start here. Susanne, if you can introduce yourself and talk about the topics that your group thought were important. You can stand if you want to.
Är den här på? My name is Susanne von Walter and I work at Swedish University for Agriculture Sciences on the SIDA help desk for climate and environment. So I work mainly for SIDA but based at the university. In our group we have chosen about 10 issues that we wanted to take up with all of you. And the first one is, we call it innovations, business development, examples, success stories, and scaling up. And this covers a lot of things, but it has to do with the transition from subsistence farming to coming into the market and which ways to foster this in the best way. Then we spoke about urban agriculture because it's increasingly important, as everybody knows, and we were thinking about that maybe we should include urban planners, people that are architects or planners also in this, and see to that there's space for urban agriculture, and see how it can be done in the best way. Then we spoke about recycling of nutrients, which is very important, I assume, in farming systems, both in Sweden and in developing countries. And there is often a very big loss of nutrients, and we have to tackle that and discuss it more and discuss it. Sorry, faster. Then we spoke about land use change in the wide sense of the words. We spoke about drivers of land use change, the competition of land, the 3 or 4 Fs, food, fuel, and fiber, and fodder. They compete about land, and how do we deal with that issue, and where does that take us? And of course we came into trees and forestry in agriculture, because I know this is a landscape approach that you have, but still when you speak to people, they speak about agricultural land, and very many farmers in Africa have part of their subsistence income and their economical income from forests and other lands as well. Then we spoke about food safety. That has to do with pesticides. It has to do with how animals have diseases that can be transmitted to people, etc. And as I understand it, this is a big problem when you keep animals very close to you, which you often do in developing countries and especially so in cities. Then we spoke about bioenergy and about creating perennial sustainable systems for bioenergy, which will be important in the future. Then we spoke about climate. We didn't want to take it up as a special issue, but one of the things that we thought were important is cattle and climate change, which is an issue very much for discussion now, and as I understand it, it's more research needed on this issue. And then we spoke about tenure rights, of course. What's the importance of tenure rights for development in agriculture and in the farming systems in developing countries?
Okay, thank you very much. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is David Bauner, working for a company called Renetech. We work with renewable fuels and recycling of biomass in different ways, mostly East Africa. Our group, the corner here, table 7, governed by Marika in a very nice way. We came up with 10 areas as well.
30 seconds per. Wow.
Okay, per 10?
5 minutes.
Okay, I will now start. Participate. Our first priorities were, I would say, first of all, that the blue dots, among the blue dots, we have 2 of them with 3. So that's like where we mostly agreed. I will start with the red dots, just as a cliffhanger. Participate and initiate dialogue about sustainable development goals is something that we would like to hear more about as a topic. Cross-learning. This is a very interesting topic in the sense that we both discuss it as a theme, as a way of doing things, looking at cross-learning to understand how things are implemented, methods for knowledge exchange for change, We talked about both this as a topic and also a lot of subjects that could be interesting for cross-learning. Health information to school children. For school children to understand what's important not to be sick is of great importance, especially in development countries where there's so much young population, so you would reach out quickly to a lot of a large share of the population about good diets and recipes. Rural and or local agro-processing hubs. If you have a local production of agriculture produce happens all over the place, but to make them last long enough to reach the market or even be used within the community in a different part of the year is very difficult if you don't have agro-processing, and that is very difficult in the rural setting. So to know more about that. Planetary boundaries for production, to understand. Can we say something about that? I don't really. Karin?
How to it's about if you use the planetary boundaries for production and try to move it into reality, what kind of consequences will you have?
Consequences for policy from knowing what the limits are in the global
For example,
context.
if you read the planetary boundaries, you can see that it's excess of nitrogen, and we have problems with chemicals, etc., etc. And so if you use these limits and try to construct production systems.
Okay, that fits
from
with these
that
boundaries.
point of view.
Wait, that's 30 seconds.
Methods, and last but not least, among the most important items is the methods to measure sustainability, resilience assessment. Different ways are interesting topics. Among the innovative part, we think that effects of the so-called right pricing, including ecosystem services and externalities in food pricing, would be very important to know more about. And then we have cross-learning again, as I mentioned already. It's both new and important. And this is complex, not only because it contains the word complex, but also I have to understand what I'm saying. To try to connect more aspects in the complex topic food security based in the production sectors, to understand what actually we mean with food security. We talked about several aspects of that, but one is, well, there's many. Methods to, oh, there we have that one again. Was this intended? Okay, so also both important and new is the methods to measure sustainability, resilience assessment, LCA, ecosystem services, and spiderweb methods, if you've seen these. And a focus on present controversies and presently pressing issues our group found to be interesting topics. Thank you so much.
Oh, my name is Maria Larsson. I am a member in the Swedish Africa-grupperna, and I'm also an agricultural journalist and has a degree in agriculture from SLU. And I represent group number 5, which was headed by Matthew. Very good. And he has also written down the 10 most important issues that we talked about. It's 5 with red dots and 5 with blue dots. And we had a very interesting discussion on restoration and sustainability, if that was the same thing or not. And we ended up agreeing that it's restoration means sustainability. And one of our most important issues was then how to integrate agriculture and forestry production with ecosystem services, and also about soil fertility in sustainable agriculture, which soil fertility is a big problem in many African countries, for instance. And then we also talked about how to develop the agriculture in Africa. Like you have to develop some business and industries make industrial products from the African agriculture. Also, it's not only that to produce food for local use. And our friend from Senegal, she proposed that we should have more international shows of agriculture, and especially she liked the food show that they have in Paris, where you can go and taste food from all over France. and want to buy it. That was our red dots. Our blue dots, they were a bit more on knowledge, like professional development courses on system thinking and interdisciplinary, and more courses on a lower, agricultural courses on a lower level than university, like folkhögskola, as we call it in Sweden. And also a very important issue, it's how to transfer approaches on paper to real life and in the local and with local people. And the last thing we asked ourselves was, do we know what low-income countries think of our topics?
Very good.
I will stand up, otherwise my low-key voice will be even less bearable than if I'm standing. I'm with this group in the corner there. We were headed by Madeleine. We had a one-word policy, and I invented the longest word, so my punishment is to stand here and present for you. By the way, I'm Anders Malmer, and I'm also the new director of SLU Global, succeeding Arvid Uggla since 2 weeks. We had a lot of little notes and a lot of dots spreading over, and we tried to structure them. About rural producers and livelihoods, we would like to stress family farming. That's 2 words, but anyway, and gender-based solutions. And this also a little bit connects to the development. First we said smallholders, but then we said family farming, because we believe that there will be a transition in farming, even in developing countries. This also connects a little bit to innovation and entrepreneurship as well, which is in another structure we have. Next, we had a bunch of policy issues, from local to global, about trade, about development aid, trade, EU agriculture policies, the Swedish biståndsplatform, wherever it went, and all these kinds of policy issues that are burning in this field. Food losses was a strong point, getting many dots. Food losses and waste, and we actually put it together with household energy, and you can have issues about biomaterial, bioenergy, health issues, and fuels, and so on, and food losses. Food losses also connects to infrastructure, which ended up in another structure coming soon as well. We talked about value chain development and infrastructure and access to investments as 3 crucial points connected to each other. Similar to some other groups, we talked about landscapes and ecosystem services. There are trade-offs sometimes, or synergies between ecosystem services as you develop agriculture in a landscape, for example, increase intensity in cultivation and so on. A restoration comes in here, ecosystem or production system, soil productivity restoration as well. Access to food and food security. This goes all the way actually from policy, links between food security in different levels and local and global as well, but also access actually to food. Sometimes there is enough food, but for various reasons there is no access or limited access. And there are also important connection between food and health. Those were the ones who got the most points. We had a lot of other one-word things, but we left them on the table. Thank you.
So, my name is Juliana. I'm a PhD student at Södertörn University, working with the implications of large-scale land acquisitions to livelihoods. And our group there, moderated by Marie, we basically spoke about the importance of balancing, bringing many things into the boat and focusing on some specific themes. And we spoke about the importance to focus on food security and nutrition, but at the same time, with a transdisciplinary view. So we spoke about the importance of linking nature and social issues, both thematically, but also bringing professionals from different areas, researchers, both in the national and international arenas. And we spoke about agricultural research and then linking to implications to livelihoods. So always having a practice-oriented approach and larger interfaces, for example, between food security and sustainable development, but also more narrow interfaces, for example, between agriculture and forestry. Then we also spoke about the importance of promoting a bottom-up approach with about family farming and small-scale farming as alternative strategies for achieving food security that could be more sustainable on the long run. So basically, we spoke about transdisciplinarity and seeing the interfaces and putting into contact different professionals and different researchers, but without missing the focus on food security. Some specific issues within food security that some members of our groups would be interested in listening more to would be common property regimes, affordable soil erosion technology, and basically, regardless of the themes and regardless of where we decide the balance to be, that we should always keep in mind the implications for the future of our choice of themes and the recommendations that derive from the research or activities that are being done within the network. And the importance of always keeping the communication channels, especially with SIDA, wide open.
Thank you.
Tom Walsh from Renatec, focused on taking value from residues to energy and nutrients, mainly in East Africa, since 2007. I'm representing Group 8, which sits over there. So it was very creative table with lots of ideas, but we will take up 3 points for discussion here this afternoon. The first one was, which scored very highly on the innovative points, was around agriculture and this shift to urban growth and the policies for transition. That was an area that needed to be looked at very carefully, and also in terms of availability of labour and so on, to continue with agricultural production and maybe even mitigation measures, etc. There was another aspect of that which was felt to be important was we typically focus a lot on crop production, but also what's the role of livestock as part of the farming systems and the innovative aspects around that and the actual benefits. So that was part of our, in terms of our research project focus. From the second point, again, felt to be important, was the role of higher agricultural education and research, and that there should be a continuous focus around that area to build out the advisory capability throughout the various countries so that best practice can be migrated both from a technique and technology perspective so as to have a productivity increase, that there was examples highlighted of high productive farmers, and that just down the road other farmers don't have the same yield effect. So that there's a lot of what low-hanging fruit that can be adjusted there through competence and advisory help. Then the final point, which scored highly both from the point of view of importance and also innovation, was this whole area of entrepreneurship in farming, and looking at that in terms of its effect, in terms of also increase in terms of productivity improvement, but also towards the market, as well as looking at the generation shift in terms of the older farmers that they're 60s, 70s. They, they have had a lot of adversity, whereas the younger farmer, as we can see from an African perspective, they tend to have a lot of confidence and they don't have any of what we would say the colonial baggage. So there's a difference in the entrepreneur between the generational shift entrepreneur in an African context. So those were our 3 votes for the moment.
Thank you. I am the last, so do I have any time? Okay, I represent Katja's group. We're sitting here and we had a lot of discussions and not much time to write down what we're going to present. I am Karl-Erik Johansson and I have a basic education in forestry and anthropology. And then I have continued to study and worked and done research in the scaling up of sustainable practices among food and secure small-scale farmers. So we have a lot of dots on one paper here, and that is to promote fair trade and ecological farming concepts to benefit farmers and consumers. We felt that was one of the most important. And then we discussed different approaches that bring stakeholders together with the farmers to learn and govern the development process and to connect different knowledge systems together with the local knowledge, of course, included. And we talked about also the same thing in both in the rural areas and in the urban areas. Also urban farming and urban landscape, urban food security. We felt that was also important. And then another topic that we thought it would be good to have in SIANI was joint project development, matching members and outsiders to include grassroots level, policy levels, researchers, development actors in joint project development. Livestock production and health in the context of food security, applying a value chain approach. We think of food production, then animals sometimes are left out, but they are really important in the whole farming system and an important component. For also in food security and nutrition, the animals are very important. We have heard that from Tetra Pak today. Important to follow the global dialogue, identifying knowledge gap, what are the needs and interests in the countries that we want to do research and development. So that was the last point.
Good. Great. All right. Thank you for holding
Thank you very
the
much.
time. I didn't set the limits, by the way, of the time. I just got
Okay.
them. So here we go. A big round of applause to our excellent rapporteurs.